Right, hopefully everyone can see that. Wonderful. So, as mentioned, this is part of the HE week, and this evening I'm going to be talking to you about higher education and research into that. So first of all, higher education. Why would anyone bother, basically? That's quite a direct question, but it's one many people might ask. There are many reasons for students that go on to study a degree. First of all, it may be required for a specific career. Just bear with me a moment. We've got people asking to come in. I think they've been allowed. Okay. So yes, a degree may be required for a specific career. I mean, if you want to become a doctor, for instance, then you have to get a medical degree. Similarly, a social work degree is required to be a social worker and so on. So it may be a requisite for that particular career you want to go into. It may be an opportunity for you to give yourself more time to decide on exactly what career you want to do. You may find at the moment, or when you come to leave King Edge, that you don't know exactly what job you want as a career. And therefore, going to study a degree at higher education will give you 3 more years before you actually have to apply for a job and start that particular career. It's a great opportunity to study something that you enjoy and that you're good at. There are literally tens of thousands of different subjects that are focusing on various different areas that you can find something that you're really, really interested in and enjoy, and certainly get the best out of the experience. Oh, microphone. Thanks. It's also very flexible, which is certainly a big attraction for a lot of people. As I said, you don't have to have decided exactly what career you want to go on into. Can we, just a moment, I need to, okay. Right, sorry. So this needs to be flexible. So a degree, one of the main attractions of it is the fact that you could go and study something and then wait until after you've completed your degree to use that to go into a whole new area. Degrees are broken down into 2 general groups. You've got the vocational ones that are set up to actually do a specific job, things like medicine or social work, as I mentioned. But then there are tens of thousands of other subjects that are academic, that don't have a specific career lined up afterwards. And that gives you the opportunity to study something broader. And not only will that give you some flexibility, because whatever degree you choose, you can then use that to go into something completely different. It's worthwhile realising that just under 70% of the graduate job vacancies don't specify a degree subject. So no matter what you studied, you'd still be able to apply to just under 70% of the graduate job adverts out there. So that's useful to know if you're not sure and you want to study something that doesn't necessarily have a direct link to a career, something like, I don't know, philosophy or English, say, because it's known that those skills you would acquire by doing that degree will enable you to move into different areas and gain useful employment. Another reason why students apply to higher education is it can be a good backup plan, particularly if students are planning or hoping to go on to a degree apprenticeship or an apprenticeship of some kind, because they can be tricky to secure and they cannot, maybe not as available as you would hope. It's worthwhile also applying to higher education. So in case you don't get in that apprenticeship or the vacancy doesn't crop up that you wanted, you know that you've got that as a backup plan to make sure that you're not left with nothing when you leave college. So as to give you an idea of the general timescale, by the end of year 12, you should have a good idea which 5 courses you want to apply to, and also an idea of what they want from an applicant. Near the end of year 12, you'll all register on the UCAS apply system, as we'll get that set up, and through your tutorials, you'll be able to register on that and get set up on there. And so it's important that by the end of year 12, you've got an idea what you're going to be applying to, because when you come back in year 13, that's when you're actually going to be applying. Your application is based on your predicted grades, because obviously you'll be making an application before you finish your A-levels, so you won't actually have got your final grades. And these predicted grades are predicted by your teachers. Each of your predicted grades are worth UCAS tariff points, and this is something that some university courses look into. Many don't, many just focus on saying you need A and 2 Bs, but some universities may talk about tariff points instead, and you can convert your predicted grades into tariff points by simply converting them by this table. For instance, an A is worth 48 points, C 32, and so therefore a combination of A, B, B is worth 128. As I said, a lot of universities just state they want specific grades in specific subjects, whereas some universities may talk about tariff points. Now, it's worth remembering that courses may also require other things. It may not be just the case that because you have so many tariff points, you'll definitely be accepted. For instance, they may ask for specific grades in specific subjects. You may need to have got a certain amount of work experience. I mean, particularly for medicine and so on, that's essential, and for teaching and so on. There's also likely to be interviews, possibly admissions tests, and they might even require specific GCSE results. So it's important that you are aware of what's required and ensure that you have that those requirements, basically. Some universities, as I mentioned, just talk about tariff points, and that's fine. And there are a lot of other things aside from A-levels themselves that are worth tariff points. For instance, certain levels of musician certification are worth UCAS points, but that doesn't mean to say that they will be taken into account by the university. So it's important that you are aware of those when you're researching exactly what's required and taken on board by the universities that you're interested in. So, first of all, you need to be wise with your 5. As mentioned, when you apply through UCAS, you can choose up to 5 courses to apply to. That could be 5 courses from one university, or it could be 1 course from 5 different universities. It's 5 courses themselves that you apply to. And it's important to consider some factors about this. First of all, as I said, what grades are they asking for? And also how competitive the places are. You may have the grades that they require, but some of these university places may be very, very competitive, maybe having upwards of 20 or 30 people applying for every 1 place, which means that even if you have the grades required, there's no guarantee that you definitely get in. So bearing that in mind is very important. You also need a backup plan. So 1 or more of your 5 choices should have lower grade requirements, or be courses that you know are less competitive. So this is just in case things don't go quite as well as you'd hope, and make sure that you've got that covered within your 5 choices. So for instance, as a kind of rule of thumb, I would recommend in terms of your 5, maybe have 1 or 2 that are aspirational, maybe even requiring grades slightly higher than you're predicted. But then also make sure you've got 2 choices in there that are asking for grades that you're predicted, and then maybe 1 that's lower as a backup plan. So it's important that you bear that in mind when you're applying to the 5. It's also important to realise that you apply to 5 courses, but you only write 1 personal statement, and that is seen by all the choices. So it's incredibly hard, if not impossible, to write a personal statement that covers 5 subjects that are completely disparate and very wide-ranging. For instance, it's arguably impossible to write a personal statement that conveys your suitability and interest in, I don't know, physics and dance and English and something else. So it's usual that your 5 choices are similar. For instance, if they're engineering, say they're all engineering courses, so your personal statement can convey your interest and skills specifically for engineering. Now, to help you in terms of sorting out and finding out what possible courses you could consider, we strongly recommend that you get involved and use Unifrog. You've all been registered. If you haven't, or you're having problems, then if you'd email me during the college day, I will help you get sorted out and logged on. But you certainly should be able to log on And the first place I recommend you could look is the careers library. If you have a particular career that you are definitely thinking about pursuing, then you can look up details on the careers library, and you can make sure if there are any specific degrees that are required to make sure that you are moving on to those things that can get you there. If you have no ideas about what particular areas you want to move into, then the subjects library is particularly useful. You can click on that and you can input the 3 A-levels that you're currently studying, and it will suggest a whole range of different university subjects and learning areas that you could consider. It'll suggest what the details are taught, the kind of pros and cons of it, what's involved, where it's taught, and all these other kind of factors. So it's a really useful thing to kind of open your eyes to some of the possibilities that you may not have been aware of. For instance, you might be doing, let's say, sciences, and you might be applying or thinking about doing biology. Yes, that's great. You can go ahead and study a degree in biology, but it would be a terrible shame for you to go to university to study biology and then 2 weeks in make a new friend who says, oh, I'm doing, I don't know, marine nuclear molecular biology or something, and you say, oh, that sounds awesome, I wish I was doing that. And the only reason you're not doing it is because you didn't know it existed. So looking through the subjects library will really make sure you open your eyes to a lot of those possibilities out there. There's also some other places I recommend. For instance, the Prospects website. Although the Prospects website is actually aimed at graduates, individuals who have already got their degree, there is a useful section on there called Options with My Subject. So for instance, you can go on there, you can scroll down, and it'll tell you, you pick one of the degree subjects, say geography, say, and it'll then tell you the kind of work that people with a geography degree go on to. Typical employers, the skills that someone with a geography degree has, where they're best used, and give you examples of the employment and so on that people move on to, which can be useful if you are thinking about a degree, but you're not sure what it might lead to. I mean, as I said, for instance, English or philosophy may not have clear-cut careers afterwards, but if you go on this website, you will be inundated with information about the great range of different things English and philosophy graduates often go on to do. As I said, remember, degree improves employability and gives you more time to decide. Even if it doesn't have a direct link to a specific career, it gives you more time to decide and then enables you to use it in a whole range of things that you may not have thought were necessarily linked. Now, when it comes to choosing a course, Unifrog again has some very useful tools. The most obvious one is the UK Universities tool. As you can see, there are a few other ones that are more specific. You can use Unifrog to search for apprenticeships, as well as specific courses at Oxbridge, universities and courses in the United States, as well as European universities. And if you are thinking about those, and those are certainly useful tools. I'm going to specifically look at the general UK universities tool here. By clicking on that, it'll then ask you a few straightforward, simple details, mainly being what your kind of predicted or expected grades are going to be. And you can then also put in a subject or a keyword that you're considering. This example, I put in, I think, BBC as grades and typed in engineering. And then it brings up all the possible courses in the entirety of the UK under these 3 columns. The first one being aspirational courses, those courses that are asking for grades higher than BBC, and you can see that there are 285 there. There are 122 in the solid column, which is the ones that are pretty much bang on asking for BBC, and then there are also 190 in the safe column, those that are asking for grades slightly lower than that. And you can see that these safer ones, the lower grades, are talking about UCAS points, whereas the other ones are more concerned with exact A-level grades themselves. And the first thing you can do is click on the filter button at the top. And this way you can start to filter out things that you may not feel are appropriate. You might be concerned with the distance away, whether you want to stay local or not. You can cut out ones that may be too far away. You could also look at courses that include a study abroad year, whether there's a foundation or a sandwich program. A sandwich is an additional year that allows you to work within industry, which can be very useful for getting experience. Once you've filtered out those possibilities, you can then click on ranking them. And again, this enables you to compare and contrast them through a range of different criteria that are specific to you as an individual. For instance, on this slide, you can see that I've selected the starting salary, and it's flipped the lists round so that the ones at the top have the highest average starting salary. You can see there the solid one, mechanical engineering, a 4-year full-time BEng course at Robert Gordon University has an average starting salary for graduates at just under £3,000 a year. You can also select things like the entry requirements, the distance from home, even a social life rating. Depends on what are the important elements for you. And it switches them round, and then you can select, as I have here in the kind of red colour, by clicking on them, individuals that you think are of particular interest. You can select up to 10, and then when you select next, that becomes your shortlist, which you can work from. Now, choosing any kind of university place, there are, as mentioned, many different kind of considerations. There's a whole load of possible ones. City centre or rural? Would you like the idea of being part of a huge city in London or in the centre of Birmingham, or would you prefer a nice, grassier, more rural area? A campus, self-contained university, or would you prefer one where each of the departments are separated all over a city? How is it taught? Is it teaching-led or research-led? Is it large or small? Would you be happier being one of 300 students in a lecture theatre? Or would you prefer to be in a smaller group, maybe having a seminar? How far away is it, obviously? Do you want to go far away, or do you want to stay at home, or do you want to go somewhere in between? How expensive is it? Is student support available? Are there areas that you have interest in that they cater for? Is there a sport that you play that you could be part of their team? Do you have extra needs that you want to make sure that the university can support you with? All these things are worth considering, but all of it is worth keeping in mind that the best university is the one which is right for you. Many students can ask, or what's the best university for this or that? And there are many different league tables that outline the best results from certain different universities. But that doesn't mean to say that that would necessarily be the best one for you. You are an individual, you learn and succeed in various different situations. So it is about finding the one that's going to enable you to study the thing that you're most interested in and enable you to succeed in the best way possible. Once we've moved on from the shortlisting bit and you click on that on UniFrog, each of the selections has loads more information, enabling you to really get down into the nitty-gritty and better understand exactly what's involved. This is just a screenshot of some information on one of the courses that are selected. You can see that there's a link to Open Day information. Obviously, at the moment, there's not a lot going on Open Days, they're generally virtual, and finding out about that. And there's also a course page. It's important to find out exactly what modules are going to be covered by this course. Do they cover the stuff that you're interested in? As well as information, there's a video about the university, information about the overall success rate, entry requirements. So again, gives you an idea of how competitive it is, to give you a better idea of where in your 5 choices this might be. So using this as a short list enables you to focus in more, and you can then save it and come back to it, or you might decide to scrap this particular one, and it really allows you to get, as I say, down to the nitty-gritty and make some decisions about, yes, I want to find out more about this one, this could be a good possibility that I'm intrigued by. I'd also really recommend engaging with universities early. At the moment, or certainly for quite some time, the careers department have been informing students all about various things that universities offer. Access schemes, things like A to B, there's things with York and Sheffield, and most universities have various named access schemes designed to help students find out more and engage with them and basically get you involved. There are also loads of taster days, opportunities to get to visit, possibly or virtually, different universities and experience what it's like studying that particular subject, enabling you to actually find out, yeah, it is something I want to do, or maybe not. Similar with placements. Actually going along and working with universities is a possibility. There's things like the Nuffield placement, which enables students to engage with research in the scientific areas. And all these things not only give you experience of working and getting better understanding universities, but it also improves your application. If you can talk about these extra things you've been doing and how you understand and are particularly engaged with the subject, makes for a much stronger personal statement and will certainly help in the applications when you come to make them. If you aren't already and you are interested in some of the specific areas that the college offers in terms of pathways, I would certainly recommend you signing up to them. The college itself runs a number of pathways. There's a medical or medicine one, healthcare that covers everything linked to medicine but isn't for doctors, so things like nursing, psychology, physiotherapy, pharmacy. There's engineering, law, the creative arts, and a number of other ones that, if you are interested in those, you sign up, you can drop an email to the enrichment@keds.ac.uk. Your name will go on that pathway, and then when we come across opportunities, we can send them out to you. But it's also not just a case of waiting to be sent the ones that we're aware of. Find out for yourself. If there's a university or a subject you're interested in, find out what kind of schemes and taster days they do. As I said, it's a really good way to find out whether that subject and that university is right for you. So I think that covers a lot of the main kind of areas. It's important when we come to thinking about questions that when you're visiting the universities or speaking to admissions tutors, that you think about the kind of questions to ask. For instance, things like, how is the course studied? As I said, how would you best learn? Do they cover the main areas they're interested in? What careers do people move on to afterwards? As well as looking things up on the prospects website, actually ask them, what do people who study this subject go on to do? As I said, you'd be surprised by how many varied careers people move on to from what might seem like university degrees that aren't necessarily related. How competitive are the places? As I mentioned, it's important to have an idea of how you'll face the number of other applicants. It's also a good idea to ask them what they look for in applications. If you ask them what they look for in a personal statement, they will happily tell you, and that makes it far easier for you to give it to them yourself. And similarly, you can also ask about what bursaries and scholarships are available. There are normally a great range of possibilities, sports and academic scholarships. If you play a sport to a particular high level, universities may well give you various extras in order for you to play for their team. Similarly, if you perform particularly well in one particular area, there may again be scholarships or rewards of some kind that may be available to you. So basically, go and find stuff out. It's quite straightforward, really. I mean, higher education or any option really is scary because of all the things that you don't know. And that's what kind of makes it worrying. So instead of worrying about it, the best advice I can give you is to find out what's available and ask for help if you need it. By finding out, you can actually get an idea of what the possibilities are. There's this that has that pro or con, and there's this, and that enables you to make a decision. And it becomes far less scary and greatly improves the chances of you studying somewhere, studying something that you enjoy, somewhere that you really enjoy it and get the most out of it. Because the vast majority of people that go on to university, not everyone, there are one or two that maybe don't have a great experience, but the vast majority have an awesome time. So think about the research into this as making the most of this possible opportunity. Okay, by looking into things, it greatly improves the chances of you having a successful and enjoyable time. And these are the different ways you can get involved. So that pretty much rounds things off. As I mentioned, I'm part of the careers team, so if you do have any questions, feel free to email them in. If you want an appointment to discuss your careers options in more detail in a one-to-one, and again, similarly, email us or pop into the careers office and speak to us there. But now I'll open that up to any questions. So if you do have any, I'll put them on the chat and I'll do my best to answer them now. We have had a couple of questions come in earlier, which I shall just have a look at now. Someone asked about any extra things to do with Oxford and Cambridge. If there are any students that are thinking about or interested in Oxford and Cambridge, there's the Aspire group that operates within King Ed's, and that's something I'll recommend you get involved in. And as I've shown you on Unifrog, there's a specific Oxbridge search course tool on there that looks specifically at those subjects. One question is asking about what is the difference between applying to a university directly compared to UCAS. It's not really a done thing, really, applying to universities directly. Almost all of them go through UCAS. It's not generally something that really goes on, really. So it is through UCAS that's the main gate holder. Do universities publish how competitive places on courses are? Yes, they do. As I said, one of the things on Unifrog, when you can look up, is the percentage of success that students have in applying there. So it does give you an idea how many are that kind of in terms of the success rates of your applicants. And you can also ask them. I mean, as I said, if you speak to admissions tutors, ask them what are the success rates. How many people are applying to every one particular place is a very good question that could be asked. Let me just have a look on that with the question. Bear with me a second as it's disappeared off my screen now. And with the question, there we go. What is the deadline to complete UCAS application? Okay, as I mentioned, when UCAS is something that you will begin in year 13. So, as I said, the idea of the timescale is when it comes to the end of year 12, you should have a good idea what your plans are and what you want to be doing. And then when you come back in year 13, you'll actually start applying. Students that are applying to early deadline courses, medicine, dentistry, veterinary and Oxbridge, have an earlier deadline, but everyone else has a slightly later one. Now, the UCAS deadline isn't until January. However, we operate an earlier deadline for King Ed students, mainly because when you've completed your UCAS application, it doesn't just go off to UCAS. It stays with the college, and we have to add the various references and other elements from your tutors. So in order to give us time to do that, we have this earlier deadline, because when you finish, it stays with us until we've added those, and then we send that off to UCAS itself. So we'll be discussing a lot of that in much more detail in year 13 when you come to actually be applying. Right, another question, just bear with me. Is it worth doing an EPQ? Yes, it certainly can be. EPQs, it depends on how the university course views it. It's certainly, at the very least, an EPQ is worthwhile because you can then discuss the research that you've done. You can add it to your personal statement and will strengthen your application. Some universities would take it on board and bolster your application in terms of the grades that they're accepting, and similarly EPQ is worth UCAS points, so with some universities would see it as adding to those A levels that you've already got. So yeah, it certainly is worth it. It gives an opportunity to do extra research, and in the very least that strongly strengthens your applications to any universities. Should we be booking places for Uni Open Days, or should we wait to see if they're going to go ahead in real life? It's worthwhile. Well, yeah, when you go online, you can be attending or looking up when the open days are. Most universities will be keen to be actually running those, hopefully in real life, when things hopefully become able to do so. But even if they are unable to operate and for you to go there in person, they usually offer virtual open days to enable you to have a look around through the screens and so on. And it is really important that you do look into those, ideally going along to the open day if possible. Because if you're thinking about going away and living possibly at the university for 3 years to study, it's important that you found out enough about the place as much as you can. If all you're doing is looking at pictures in, I don't know, on pictures on their website or in the brochures or the prospectuses, then you'll only ever see pictures, of the best looking students outside the best looking building on the sunniest day. It's really important to have, as best as you can, a look around to find out what the place is really like. It might be there only one nice building. It could be the department that you're possibly going to work with most of all isn't really that pleasant. Or you could find out that it's actually they focus on some really interesting area that you're intrigued in, and it's important to make sure that there's as much information as you can find. In fact, there's some studies that have proven that the majority of students that drop out or don't succeed at university hadn't been involved in an open day, mainly because they've obviously gone along without fully understanding what the place is like, and therefore that increases the chances of things not going well. So this part of the research, to find out, to visit open days, to speak to admissions tutors, to ask these questions, is really important and will drastically improve the chances of you being happy and successful and having a brilliant time. Any other questions that are popping up? One of the questions that came up was, how can you make sure you maximise the amount of UCAS points you can receive? As I said, with UCAS points, it really depends on the course that you're applying to. Some of them just ask for UCAS points, and there are lots of things that are worth UCAS points. As I mentioned, things like musical grades and so on. But just because they're worth UCAS points doesn't mean to say that the university is going to view them in that light. And a lot of universities, as I pointed out, focus on just the grades and aren't looking at things in terms of tariff points. So it depends on the universities that you're looking at. But if you're looking at one and you don't have exact grades, but you want to strengthen your application, then give them a call. Ask them, say, I want interest in this course, my grades are whatever, what do you recommend I do to improve things? And they'll happily tell you, and that's the best advice for that specific goal. Is it worth talking to other students on blogs and chat rooms? Yeah, that can certainly be very useful. There are lots of student kind of chat rooms out there. Things like the student rooms is one that is very popular. Do bear in mind, though, that just because someone is discussing things online doesn't mean to say that they are, an expert or are necessarily telling you 100% details. But it is worthwhile to get an idea. You certainly get some kind of interesting responses and get a feel for what people think about ideas. And it's also quite common when students have applied to and are looking forward to going to various courses and universities, that students get together and start discussing things online and making friends even before they start on day one. So that's certainly another thing that can be useful. Any other questions? Well, as I mentioned at the start, I'm just one of the careers professionals here at King Ed's. We are in DD 007, so pop along and speak to us if you've got any queries. Drop us an email, you can book an appointment, and basically we are here to enable you to make the best decisions for yourself about what you're going to be doing in the future, because there's a lot of different possibilities, and the more information you get and the better you understand things, drastically improves the chances of you making the best decisions and making a success of things. Hope that's covered a lot of the things. If anything does pop up, just drop us an email or pop in to see us. But other than that, I think that covers everything. Thank you ever so much, and yeah, good evening.